All right, hey everybody. All right, welcome to tonight's episode, Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. As you can see, we got two different faces here. So Coach Dustin, Coach Brad, they are away tonight. And so I thought, geez, I could do a solo one and just rant and everybody could listen to me babble on. But then I thought maybe better. I got two of our coaches with us, two of our long-term members are with us. We got in the middle, we got Ryan McKenzie. We call him Mac, so you can just call him Mac. And on the far outside, we got Shane. And Shane, how long you been with me now? Where are you at? What decade are you in? 10 years? I don't even know.
10 years about right now. Yeah.
10 years about right now.
Going on
Mac,
11.
Yeah, going on 11. And Mac, you're more than that. You are.
I think I'm going on 13 or 14 right now.
13 or 14 years. Okay, perfect. Shane, you're unsynced a little bit with us. I can see that on your mic, but we'll give it a second. Hopefully you'll buffer up and catch up to us. If not, I might get you to jump off and jump back on here. But just hang on 1 second because, listen, I'm going to introduce tonight's podcast. Tonight we're going to talk about the Warriors Chrysalis. Okay, so I thought this would be a really interesting one since I've got two new guys on, guys that have been training for a decade plus each. But there is something, I call it the Warriors Chrysalis because the term chrysalis is a state of transformation. And everybody that begins the weaponized process, we all go through a transformation. And so I thought it'd be very interesting to break down and share what our chrysalis has been for each of us, because the path is different for everybody, although there are commonalities that we all obviously share. But I thought it would be very interesting for people out there to hear and share our experiences for what that Warriors Chrysalis looks like to us, what it means to us, and what has brought us to the point that we're at today. So we're gonna dive deep into the Warriors Chrysalis. Stay with us. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Been helping good people just like you, and yeah, hopefully Shane, looks like you're synced back up with us here a little bit. But we'll just play it by ear. If you have to jump off, that's fine. Then you can just jump right back on. But okay, just before we cut to the intro, I talked about the Warriors Chrysalis, and again, for me, I think it's such an interesting thing. And I thought people would really benefit from hearing how each of us sees our transformation, because that's what it is. And I really love the word. There's two words. I love the word chrysalis because it is a state of change. And, as growth mindset individuals, most people that are protectors, that are warriors, are growth mindset individuals, right? We can't afford to have a defensive mindset. We're not the type of people that sit around and wait for Superman to come save us. We're not the type of people that just sit around and bitch and complain about how everybody else has fucked us and this isn't fair and the government's out. Like, again, everybody's been wrong. There's always lots of shit. There's always lots of excuses if that's what you go looking for. But warriors, right, are men of action. Their growth mindset, their offensive mindset, meaning that we are constantly living in a state of transformation. So that's a chrysalis. One of the things, and maybe this will just be the first question you guys can field, but like for me, I always say that everything I have in my life, I owe to training. I owe to the weaponization process. And this is part of what I mean. The weaponizing process, and I've been doing this for 30 years, but you don't repeat. That's what I love about this. I'm not just like, for the first 5 to 7 years, I was learning. It was all brand new to me. And then I've been repeating for the last 20 years and just like, polishing the edge that was already on my sword. And it's like, no, man, I've actually been 30 years consistently challenged, consistently growing, right? That's the weaponization process. It is constantly taxing me, constantly finding the thing that'll get me killed the quickest, and then forcing me to confront my own limitations, forcing me to grow. So training and weaponizing is a chrysalis. The entire process is a chrysalis. It keeps me in that perpetual state of transformation and growth. And so that serves me in every aspect of my life. So for me, training, that's what it does for me. It is that perpetual chrysalis for me. So for you guys, how does training or the weaponizing process, just on this front, I mean, there's lots of angles we're going to talk about this, but does training do the same thing for you? Like, how does this resonate with you when I say, what has been your Warriors process? What has been the Warriors Chrysalis for you? I don't care who wants to answer first. Somebody can jump in. Okay, Mac, we can't hear you. Did you mute yourself? No, still can't hear you. Okay, Shane, you get to go first.
Wonderful.
Okay, you're still not synced up too. All right, we okay.
Oh,
Keep talking though, because we can hear you. The audio is good. The video and the audio is not synced. We look like we're doing a cheap kung fu
okay.
flick if you're watching us. Go ahead though, Shane.
Okay. Yeah. The Warriors Chrysalis. So, kind of like what could you kind of like elaborate just a little bit more so I can kind of get a better sense of
like for me, like here's it's awesome because I have a 30,000 foot view, right? Because you've been with me for 10 years, coming on 11 years, so I remember you from year one. Now you obviously are trying to remember back to what type of man you were and who you were 11 years ago is harder for you because you're living your experience. So for me, like, what has it been like from day one to year 11? Like, just an overview of like, what has the change been like? Like, has training been a chrysalis for you in your life? And if so, in what way?
oh shit, like hugely. Like I can't even imagine what life would be like without having the training, right? It's not only have I like do I feel like, well, to put it frankly, like a badass, right? Because of everything that I'm learning here, but it's spilled out into the rest of my life too, right? So it's affected every aspect of my life when it comes to, like being offensively mindset and getting things done and just it's like that growth mindset with the training rubs off on everything else where it's like you really want to keep progressing forward. Like doesn't matter how fast you go, but moving in the right direction constantly, always.
Yeah, I love this because I'm going to cue in on something, and Mac's back with us, so we'll jump to Mac in a second. But I'm going to cue in something you said because I love the fact we said, listen, like the training makes me feel like a badass. But like, and right away you almost wanted to contextualize that, but that's not the most important thing. But it's also a pretty fucking cool thing because at the end of the day, like I always say, like weaponizing is primal. Like I believe I was raised this way, and most of the people that train with us have been raised this way too. But I was raised from a boy. I was taught that a man needs to both be able to provide and to protect. So I grew up with that as one of my core beliefs. And so of course you develop a work ethic because what does it take to put food on the table for your family? What does it take to make sure that there's shelter for your family? What does it take to make, now nobody gives a shit whether you're making $1 million or not, but the point is that I want to provide for my family. I want them to be healthy. I want them to be safe, in the side, that context of providing. But at the same time, I want to protect that. Because for whatever reason, just as a young man, I just was always taught a man needs to be able to protect, needs to be able to stand up for what he fucking believes in, needs to be able to stand up for his family. His wife and his children are going to turn to him, and they're going to turn to him looking for him to provide safety. Not that women and children don't develop their own defensive strategies and can't stand on their own 2 feet, but you are a family unit, and that is part of the role as a man. So when you say, like, not only does it make me feel like a badass, but that's nothing to gloss over because that's primal. And isn't it interesting that when something that primal, how could it not bleed into the other aspects of your life? How, you know what I mean? How can it not make you better at business, better as a better son, a better friend, like the whole deal, right? So I like the fact that you keyed on the fact that it makes you a badass and that it spreads into every other aspect of your life, right? So is that something that you carry? Like, how does that manifest every day for you? Like, because typically we don't wake up going, I'm a fucking badass, right? It's not a braggadocious way. It's not an ego thing.
No.
Yeah.
It's the thing that I found for sure is like, there's more confidence. Like I'm walking around with more confidence. It's almost like the little things that would bother you or might have bothered you in the past, like don't even fucking matter anymore. Like it's just, you have this confidence about you. So it's like what people might be thinking, like how you think, how your perception is on things. It's just, yeah, I am confidence is the word that just keeps coming up, right? Like it's, you walk around and you have like, I don't know, it's an air about yourself where, like knowing that whatever kind of life you're building, you have what it takes to basically defend all of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. It's huge in its primal, right? All right, Mac, why don't we jump to you real quick? Let's see if we got some audio here.
Yeah, hopefully it's
you're
coming
back.
through now. Yeah. Well, even when you start out and you asked us how long we've been training for, and I had to think about it for a couple of seconds, it's like, yeah, 13 years. And you're talking about the process of training. One of the first thoughts that came to my mind was training even after 13 years feels like I've only been training maybe a few weeks or a few months. Like everything always feels new, and I'm always excited to get to train. And I think that's very important because that's part of the process. It's not just keeping things fresh or like we're always trying to work something new or different. A lot of times we're working some of the same things, but we're just working at it from a different perspective. And I think that's kind of that growth mindset. And it's also how you get good at a specific task is you got to keep looking at it from a different perspective and training the same thing, but in different ways. And even if that rotates back around to a way you did it 3 years ago or 3 months ago or 13 years ago, you're now a different person when you come back to it, and your perspective's changed, your attributes have changed, you've changed as a person, and I think that's really huge too because you get to see growth in yourself. And I don't think there's very many other areas of your person's life where you get that kind of experience all that time and getting to see that change and knowing that you're better at something. So that's just one of the first things that popped into my mind when you were talking about it.
I love it. I love it because one of the things that's so cool, and again, it's exactly what I talk about, right? Like this whole process is a chrysalis. Again, a state of change. I'm going to keep repeating the word because a lot of people don't. I think they either don't fully understand the value of having something in your life that is that forces change, and I use the term force in the most positive way I could possibly do it, because sometimes we don't want to change because we don't want to confront our limitations, and everyone has constrictions in our life, right? Whether that's a mindset, whether it's a belief, whether it's a physical constriction. We all have constraints or constrictions, and so if you have a process, and I believe that the process is rooted in immutable concepts, or primal, like warriorship is. You can't. That's exactly where it goes. It's not only does it go there, it's the first fucking place it goes. It just constantly hones in on like your weaknesses, or it shines a light into the dark corners, so to speak. And so I like that you talked about how you've been training for 13 years, and yet it feels like I've just been here for a month. And you talked about deeper, not newer. It's taking very simple strategies, tactics, and tools, and constantly going deeper on them. And that's such an important thing to not gloss over, because at the end of the day, violence is a very, it's toxic, corrosive, and it's septic. You don't need a lot of flashy shit. You don't need more and more shit. It's not a daily increase, to quote Bruce Lee. It's a daily decrease. So it's taking the very simple things. What are the fundamental? What are the ABCs of how I'm going to defend my life? And it's working those. And the first thing, learn them, build the foundation, go from zero to formidable. Then it's go fucking deep. Not go new, go fucking deep. And so I love that for you, part of your overall Chrysalis experience is the journey of going deep. Because it is, like I always said, I find the beauty in the simple things and doing the simple things well. Just really going deep on the simple things. I'm not driven by chasing belts or chasing new techniques or increasing my tools in the toolbox, as I so often hear from people. Another tool in the toolbox, another tool in the toolbox. And it's like, it shouldn't really be about you're not a car collector. You know what I mean? But again, we're not in it for, competition or the art of fighting. We're in it for survival, sort of thing. So I love that part of it. Okay. So the next thing that I would do then is we each kind of agree and share our overview of what the Warrior Chrysalis is from, year 1 to year 30, year 13, year 11. Can you guys reflect back on who you were before you started this process? Like what was the first big aha moment for you guys? Because we often refer to them as the aha moments. And now I know that there's been a ton, hundreds of aha moments. But can you go back to the beginning and think of what was one of the first aha moments when you got into the training? And I'll share one of mine real quick. And it's not just one I have a number of them, but just one, just so you get an idea of maybe where I'm coming from with this. The very first time that and again, it just happened to be literally the very first time that I sat down with Paul. And I'll never forget because I had come from, like a martial art background, right? So I'd done the traditional martial arts, I'd done the kickboxing, Thai boxing kind of stuff. But all of that was done in a dojo. It was done in a martial arts club. And so what was very interesting to me is I equate that to like my formalized training years. And then all of a sudden, here I am, met Paul Vunick, hand-to-hand combat instructor for the U.S. Navy SEALs, one of the most revered combat instructors in the world. And here I am at his house, just this average, ordinary, everyday house kind of thing, Southern California. And he literally opens up the garage door, right? He's like, okay, let's go. Opens his garage door where his cars are parked, 2 cars, older cars. And his cars are parked on top of mats, these old blue beat up mats. He backs his cars out of the garage. Oil was leaking out of the cars onto the mats. And he's like, oh yeah, like pushes the tools out of the way and, all the type of bullshit you have in your garage. And like we sit down and he starts talking about violence. He starts talking about combat. And the contrast in my brain, but this moment, like for me, that was a real Chrysalis moment, like it was a transformative moment. Because all of the formalized training that I had in these, impeccably clean, matted, air-conditioned, fully equipped gyms, and yet nothing that I was being taught there was applicable to the actual goal that I had, which was how do I defend myself against, violence. And yet here I am in this oil-stained, matted, like literally just a fucking garage, at some guy's house, and yet instantaneously the stuff that he started talking about was at a level that I didn't even know existed. It was unparalleled. Understood combat, had lived combat, was training, you know what I mean? Like just, so for me, that's, I realized in that moment that I didn't even know what I didn't fucking know. Like the level of ignorance that I had about what was out there became really, really clear to me. And I always look at that as like, that was a really powerful moment for me because it was transformative. Because in that moment, that was the moment that I hated filler. I'll just explain that real quick. I hate fucking filler. And filler to me is anything that isn't directly related to making you better at survival. So I don't like belts. I don't like certificates. I don't like bowing. I don't like formalities. I don't like any of this shit because what's it got to do with it? If a guy came to me who was a good man and his life was in danger and I had something that would save him, I had a skill set, a knowledge, a piece of advice, a technique, a tool, anything that could save him, why would I deny that to a good man? If I came across an accident scene and a car had rolled over and the car was, on fire, and I had a knife and the guy was stuck and I could break the window or pry the door open, cut the seatbelt and free the man, the thought of having him perform some ritualistic, traditional fucking series of whatever before I gave him that help is ridiculous to me. Now, I know for a lot of people, they'll think it's extreme and it's like, listen, it teaches respect and boundaries and all that stuff. I work with adults. Typically men over the age of 30. If you haven't been taught manners by that point in your life, you're fucking probably beyond help and you wouldn't come to me anyhow because whatever. So that moment though taught me to get rid of fuck all the bullshit. You don't need 3,000 or 30,000 square foot with fancy mats and all this shit. What you need is somebody who knows what the fuck they're doing and who is willing to not just willing to, but has a passion for helping somebody prepare for what is probably one of the worst moments of their life, a life and death altercation. So I'm just trying to share with you, like, that was a massive transformation for me. That was a Chrysalis moment for me. And I think warriors have to have a bunch of those over their, that's what forms us, right? So hopefully that maybe kind of gave you an idea of what I'm talking about. And if you guys have any on your end, that would be great to hear.
Yeah. Just as you're talking, like my first aha moment, I remember it very clearly. And one of the things, it was the first time I came for my was training with you, And but to set that up, what I remember now, thinking back, I had 3 criteria. I didn't know, I hadn't thought of it consciously at the time, but it was in somewhere in my consciousness. I had this like criteria for what I thought I needed, and so those 3 things were uh, like to kind of set it up a little bit. In high school I did cross country, so I wasn't a very fast runner. I wasn't particularly good in any means, but I knew if I had had an experience where if I showed up for training and I did the drills and I went to all the practices, at the end of the year, I would go to these track meets or these races and I would do way better than I would at the beginning of the year. And so I knew if I just showed up and I did the training and submitted myself to the process and put effort in, I would get better. I would improve. So I knew that to be something that was true. The second thing I'd experienced I was in the Canadian Armed Forces, so I was in the Army, and I'd gone through basic training and basic land training and some different trades training. So I had an experience with a certain level of different types of training, but at a very basic level. So I had a kind of a belief or an experience with what I thought, okay training was, bad training was, and what I thought good training was. And I think that gave me a little bit of a filter for what I thought was good and what was bad. And obviously none of this was at the conscious level. This was all subconscious. But I felt I had like a little bit of a basic idea of a filter for what bullshit was and what something real was. And then the last thing I had was I knew intuitively that I had a need for ability to defend myself and others. And I knew I was lacking that. So here I am, and I feel like I need to be able to have these skill sets or this knowledge or this, these attributes, and I'm lacking them. Like I don't have it, so I need to go seek it out. And I knew if I submit myself to a process, I'm going to improve. And I kind of have an idea of what's real and what's bullshit. And then my first time I came to training, I got to see you demo a lot of the physical skill sets. You were talking about violence, you were talking about the problem, and I was like, yes, yes, yes. But then I got to see you do it. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So he can do it. But then I got to see 2 of your instructors, Ryan and Brad, do the exact same thing you did. And I was like, okay, so he can do it. That's great for him. But now he's taught these 2 guys to do the exact same thing and get the exact same result. And I could tell this was no bullshit. This is going to work. They have something I want. And then I was sold because I'm like, oh, all I have to do, show up, submit myself to the process, and I'm going to improve. And if he can get results for these guys, then why can't I? So, and that was just kind of, and I knew it was exactly what I needed. So, thinking back now, I wish I'd had all that knowledge and defined it that way back then. But I was just like, yeah, this is for me. I'm going to keep showing up until someone tells me I can't go anymore. That's what I've been doing.
Oh, we've tried a few times, but you just won't take no for an answer. So that's good. That's awesome. That is a great. Yeah, I love hearing that, right? Because everybody has a start. Let's let Shane jump in and share yours if you want, Shane, and then I'm going to circle back.
Okay.
Because it'll kind of lead us to another question. But go ahead, Shane.
Like the first thing that kind of popped up into my head, and I used to train under Sensei Dustin for a while there.
Okay, we got to pause right there for a second because funny story. Because Coach Dustin, who's on the podcast with you all the time, used to be, well, he still is. Let's not take away anything from Dustin. Dustin is a black belt in Taekwondo. And back when Dustin was younger, before he found the weaponization process, we call it salvation. Before he found salvation, he was actually teaching Taekwondo. And young Shane, was one of Dustin's students. So it wasn't Dustin that brought Shane to us. That was a whole different circumstance. But their paths have since crossed again. And so I think, Shane, you're the only one that calls him Sensei Dustin. The rest of us just laugh. But anyways, so go on. A young student under Sensei Dustin. He's going to hate us for sharing that. But anyways, too funny.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But like the first thing that came up is it almost felt like doing all that stuff was kind of just going through the motions kind of thing, right? Like you're just learning things and that was just kind of it. Like show up, learn this, go home, next day, learn the next thing kind of thing. And what really like stood apart for me when I first came to you was this and purpose of this, of what you were doing. And it's like I never felt like any of that other stuff really had any focus or purpose behind it. And so when I came to you, and you're so precision focused on what it is you're teaching and what it is you're giving to people, that it's like, to me, like I knew right away, like, okay, like this is what I want to do. So
Yeah.
like short and sweet.
No, it's perfect. Yeah, it's perfect, right? And again, it's like, I think it's important to identify these early, chrysalis moments. And here's what I was going to say, in kind of a form of a question to Mac and stuff. But like, again, like when we start something, like, because I always say 0 to formidable is the heaviest lifting, because when you're at 0, you got to think, we're talking about the warrior's transformation. Well, you're not a warrior. Like in the beginning, none of us are a warrior. Now, granted, you can have a life experiences. You can even as a young man, you can have a predisposition that where you have had to formulate many core beliefs that are aligned with warriorship. People have gone through challenging things and tough things, granted. But most of us, especially when we're born in a part of the world that we're blessed to be born in, for most people that would be listening to this, where it's like I didn't have to fight my way to school. I wasn't starving to death. Like, and everyone's had different struggles growing up and all that other stuff. But my point is that hard times make hard people, and soft times make soft people. And I don't regret for a second that I grew up like, it was a average middle class family, but I mean, I didn't want for anything. I didn't, I don't look back on my childhood. So, I didn't have this innate grit from this really fucking tough upbringing and harsh environment, all that type of stuff. So I was not a warrior at all. Matter of fact, I was terrified of confrontation and conflict. And I was an extremely shy kid, like very shy. And so these chrysalis moments, like the heaviest lifting, one of the hardest parts is to go with, like, Mac, you talked about how, looking back on it, you can identify a framework of 3 things, and even for you, Shane, like you were taking something else. And so, it's not like you had this consciously in your brain at the time, but you just felt the lack of maybe purpose, or like what's the root of all this? Like, yes, I'm doing these things, but where's my why? What's the North Star in this stuff? And so then something happens to us. We have these experiences that allow this first transformation to happen. And without that first transformation, there are none of the other transformations. And so a lot of people that might be listening to this right now, maybe haven't had their first, like they're out, like they haven't had that aha moment. They haven't found their chrysalis yet. That has, given them a different perspective and allowed them to move into something that will better their lives, make them safer, all this stuff. So I think sharing it is very important, that everybody understands that you don't start this journey as a warrior. We grow into this. It can be taught. Now, some people, maybe they do start with better warrior skill sets or mindsets or whatever. I wasn't one of them. So for me, this whole transformation, this whole chrysalis analogy and process was super important for me. So I would ask you, as kind of a next question then, is, and I'll just share this part of it, because, if you have a caterpillar that, goes into a cocoon, the chrysalis state, and transforms into a butterfly, I'll never forget, I remember hearing this story, and this young kid saw a cocoon bursting open and saw the butterfly or the moth inside of it struggling to get out. And so the kid sat there, watched for a while, and just was watching the struggle going on. And then eventually ran into the house and grabbed a pair of scissors, came out and clipped the cocoon a little bit. And when the butterfly or moth, whatever it was, when it then, kind of could come out. And when it came out, it just fell to the ground. And then just, died within, a few hours later, whatever, it died. It couldn't fly. And, the reason was because the kid wanting to help, the butterfly emerge from the cocoon, when they cut it, they took away the struggle. And so the struggle, though, is what flushes the fluid into the wings and it does all this stuff. So the struggle of that butterfly pushing and working its way and struggling its way out of the cocoon is actually what allows it to be able to fly. It's like the last part of the transformation. So like busting through from where you're at or who you are, hitting the ceiling and the limitations or the constraints of who you are in that moment, and then the push through that is part of what allows you to fly. Like that the struggle is what makes the chrysalis process complete. It's what finalizes or functionalizes the transformation. So that long-winded story simply because I think it's important. We're sharing the realities of what it is. Training is fun, but training is also a struggle. Like I said, it challenges you in your weakest areas because you're talking about life and death's, shit. And so if you have a weakness, that's what's going to get you killed. So for you guys, over the course of your careers, what do you think keeps you, what allows you to keep struggling? Because you have these aha moments, you have these breakthrough moments, and you guys know what I'm talking about. Those moments where you transcend, you feel it, and you're like, holy fuck, like, and sometimes that's a year-long process, sometimes it's months, sometimes it's multiple years, but you just all of a sudden fucking level up. And but that whole time there's a struggle there. What keeps you guys going through that struggle? Like what is that does that? And the other side of it is, what do you think of, so two-part question really, I guess. What do you remember more? Do you remember the struggle or do you remember the victory? Do you get what I mean? Like what sits with you more when you reflect back on 13 years of transformative experiences and growth and all that stuff, or 11 years? What sits with you the most, the struggle or the victories? Okay, so I don't know who wants to maybe answer that or take that, but whoever, go ahead.
Well, I think the thing that really keeps me going is my why. So it's like, we talked about kind of some stuff, a weekend or two ago, and it's like when violence happens, it's already too late. And to me, like internalizing that, where it's like, like you don't have another opportunity. Like you had to start yesterday kind of thing, if you could, right? Like, because when it happens, it's already too late. You can't, I guess I just feel like I can't stop, and I don't want to stop, right? It's like I want to keep getting it. I want to make sure that when it happens, that I come out on top. I don't want to take on any risk that I don't have to, right? And I want to be able to really defend myself, my family, loved ones. Like I don't want to have any of that hanging over me, that I didn't put in as much work as I could have, right? Like you stop and then it's like, well, I could have been better kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a great answer. Love it. Your why. Mac, what about for you? What makes the struggle worthwhile?
Well, I definitely remember the victories more than the struggles, although I'll admit there's been a few struggles where I'll remember forever.
Yeah.
It's like when we talk about in training sometimes, particularly when we're working on the ground and you're in an uncomfortable position, about getting comfortable. And I think that's similarities in a lot of our different training, whether it's talking about psychology or our knowledge or working in an area where we're less familiar in, and it's we have to be able to accept that perfection is never the goal. And I think once I really accepted that I'm never going to get at 100% perfect at any one part of our area of our training, or me as a warrior, things actually got easier and I got better because my training got better and my acceptance of what I'm working on and my limitations or all these different areas or aspects that could be roadblocks, they kind of fall away because they're not important. And I know you've told the story before, and it's kind of like a situation or scenario where you have a team of special forces, whether Navy SEALs or Delta Force or JTF2, and they've been training for years. They've done multiple deployments, and they're the absolute pinnacle of what you would describe as a special force tier 1 operator, tip of the spear type guys. No one would have any doubt that these are not the pinnacle of what a warrior could be. And they go on deployment, and they're stepping out of the back of a Humvee or a helicopter or something, and an artillery shell or a sniper bullet hits one of them, and boom, he's dead before he even got in the battle. And you just go, well, was he any less of a warrior? Was he any less prepared or any less trained? And it's like, no. The point is that combat is real. It's real life, and you're going to fail. And perfection, no matter how perfect you are, the result could make it irrelevant. And I think with training, that's kind of an important mindset to have too, because no matter what you're working, the goal is to improve and get better, and you're only as good as the last time you trained. So that's something I take away from my training all the time is, did I get better today? Did I improve? And when was the last time I trained? Because if something happens to my family or to me or to someone else I'm around and I'm there, I know I'm going to be only as good as the last time I trained. And so that's a really, really important aspect for me, is knowing that I'm prepared for that situation and what have I done recently to prepare for it. So,
yeah.
And accepting that I'm not going to be perfect. Whatever the scenario is, it's not going to go perfectly. So
yeah, that's huge. And
sorry,
go ahead. Yeah, Shane, go
something
ahead.
I want to add to that. And this is kind of part of like the whole Warrior Chrysalis of things that have changed. And it's nice when you hit those victories where you see like that change happening. But I'd almost go as far as to say that the struggle is the victory. Like it just, for whatever reason, like the struggle is fun. The struggle itself is like, it's that victory for me. Like it feels that way, like going in, struggling forward, or that fail forward fast mentality kind of thing. Yeah. Like that's,
yeah.
So I guess that's what I got to say with that.
It's
but
perfect. Yeah. It's perfect because what I was hoping for, and what I wanted to do in tonight's podcast was create a bit of a framework because again, the whole goal is to help anyone that's listening to this. It's to help give you something that you can take away with and use it as a map for yourself in whatever your journey looks like, in order to be able to become a better protector for yourself and your family, make you safer, make your family safer. And so what you guys just did by just sharing your story organic, because I never tell people what we're going to talk about, so you guys had no idea what we're going to talk about, there's no chance to prepare, is already I see, two really big points. The first is that no matter who you are not who you want to become when you start this. And it's like, I'll just use a quick analogy. It's like people that go, oh, I can't wait. I got to lose some weight. I want to get in shape. So I'm going to join a gym. But before I join a gym, I better lose some weight and get in shape. It's like, you know what I mean? And it's like, what? That doesn't fucking make sense. Well, I want to hire a trainer, but before I hire the trainer, I better get in shape and lose some weight. And I'm going to start a diet and start like, well, then what the fuck do you need a trainer for if you can do, you get what I mean? Like, no, well, then they can help polish me a little bit. No, you don't understand. Zero is you are not who you want to become. So you're at zero. So for anybody that's listening, you're not who you want to be. You might have a mindset. You might identify as a protector and a warrior. You might even have the willingness and courage to do something, but you have none of the training. So you're not who you are, like who you want to be. So what's the impetus? And Shane, I'm going to borrow, from what you said, which we talk about quite often, but after's too fucking late. And so for some guys, that's it. They hear a news story. They hear another fucking, they see or witness or hear another example of fucking somebody being destroyed by violence, lives being just shattered by violence. And they go, fuck this shit. After is too fucking late. I'm done waiting. I'm done making excuses. I'm done waiting till life is perfectly calm and I'm fucking done. So something has to happen. So what's your chrysalis? Okay. Now, the second thing that you guys hit on that I think is really, really big that I see everybody go through at different times, right? I think it's a very mid-state chrysalis moment, is you guys both have talked about how the struggle is the victory. How like you get comfortable in failure, because you guys, obviously you know the training we do. It's not what we do, it's how we do it. And if you're going to train in this, you cannot wait or be motivated by the pat in the back and the compliment. You can't wait to get some sort of fucking external recognition. You can't wait to get, oh, someone's going to give me a belt someday. Someone's going to put a little piece of tape with a stripe on something, and somebody's going to hold me up and praise me in front of everybody. I'm going to memorize these things and practice these things, and I'm going to get better. I'm going to be the guy. Eventually, I'm the new guy now, but in 3 years, I'm going to shit rolls downhill, and I'm going to torture the next new guy and put him through his paces. It's like, no. Like in this, it's like, what's the thing that'll get me killed the quickest? And then it's like, okay, good, you got that? Next. And then it's like, next. What's the next thing that'll cause you to fail? What's the next thing? And at the end of it, though, because I can tell people, like, what's amazing is that you actually begin to enjoy the struggle. Because the struggle, like the butterfly coming out of the cocoon, the struggle is what allows you to fucking actually become the butterfly. It's what allows you to fucking fly. So it's like every day you walk in, it's like, it's fucking fun. You just get used to this. Like you stop. Like I loved it, Mac. Perfection is never the fucking goal. Function over form. And yet when you struggle and you struggle and you struggle, like you're always getting better because struggle gets you better. So every time you train is about one thing, and that's getting better. So every time you struggle, you get better. Every time. And pretty soon, most people in life, when they struggle, they pull back. I don't want people to see me struggle. I don't want people to know I'm not good at this. I don't want this. I don't want this. But when you're just surrounded by a group of people, or you're in a culture that nobody questions struggle. Do you guys, Mac, were you there when, remember we had a friend of ours, Justin Usab, Seesaw operator, and he came out, he was transitioning to the military, special forces, highly decorated, been in numerous battles. And remember, Justin was, he runs a company on leadership, and he was, he called All Around Consulting, by the way. But he was preparing a speech on leadership, and he said, hey, listen, do you mind if I get you and a few of your guys and I do this speech for you? So he got up in front of us and he did this speech. Now, this is his first time public. This guy is an operator, you know what I mean? He's not a public speaker, but he came out. He's a very well-spoken, well-educated, brilliant guy, and he came up and he did this speech. And at the end of it, we're all sitting around and we all gave him, some feedback. But most of the feedback we gave him was positive. And that was so upsetting to him because he was like, no, I'm not used to that. Like, and it's not that it made him uncomfortable. There's no value in it. He's like, no, I'm used to, like, when someone in special operations says, what do you guys think? Give me some feedback. It's criticism first. It's errors first. It's ideas for improvement first. And it's like, and what's funny about it is, like, when we train, I realized instantaneously that's just like how we train all the time. It's like you do a scenario and it's like, here's your feedback, here's your criticism, here's this, we can improve this, we can do this, we can do this, because it's like, that's the struggle is what makes us better. That was great, now do this, but you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And it's like, and I love that mindset. And so to me, it's like, that is one of the major mid-chrysalis moments, transformations, that I believe a man has to go through in his pursuit of warriorship. Is he has to, I know you hear the cliches everywhere, but you have to be okay with failure. And not just okay with it, you have to have a process that forces it on you, that confronts you with your own limitations and constraints so that you can recognize them. And then you just learn that, like, it's okay, because the second I recognize my constraint, I change my constraint. Control can only ever follow awareness. And so I love that you guys have zeroed in on that and recognized that as a significant chrysalis moment for you guys and part of the whole warriorship training. So for a lot of people listening, you need these mindsets. You're not who you want to be in the beginning. Something's got to transform you. And then in the middle of this great journey, you just stop seeking perfection. You start loving and thriving the struggle, because the struggle is what gives you the growth. And it's just, and again, at the end of the day, what's life going to throw at you that you can't handle? Because when that's your training process, when that is, it's not a choice, it's what it is. The butterfly, the caterpillar goes, listen, this whole butterfly thing sounds pretty fucking cool. But the end of it sounds a little rough. Like maybe we could just go from, being in this chrysalis state to maybe just, put a zipper in that fucking cocoon, something a little easier to get out of. Why end that way? You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't work that fucking way. When you want to bust through and have a full transformation, struggle's the name of the game. And yet, believe it or not, it's an enjoyable process. It's fun, right? Dare I say fun. But anyway, so I think it is. Mac, you got something?
Absolutely.
I don't know. One of the things I was thinking was that quote with Mike Tyson was, it's like, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think take that into like the wider context, and it's like, yeah, what do you're in a boxing ring with Mike Tyson. What do you think was going to happen, right? Like, you got a plan, like you didn't, like you're there for a reason. I think life's like that a lot of times, where everybody's got a plan on how they think things are going to go in their life, and so something happens, whether it's your car breaks down, a bill you weren't expecting, a breakup, or lose a job. Well, who knows what it could be, but something's going to go wrong or off kilter from what you thought your plan was. And if you don't have something in your life that maybe isn't preparing you for that exactly, but is, like your example of the caterpillar turning into the butterfly or the moth, it's like you need something in your life that is preparing you and is, it allows you to take on those challenges. And I can't imagine something that's better than weaponizing and preparing for violence to prepare you for other problems and trials that you're going to have in your life. I think lots of people use fitness and exercise for that, because you can run a marathon or you can do crazy workouts. You're going to be prepared. You're taking on struggles every day, but that's different than the kind of extreme struggles that you're going to experience in life or death situations. So.
Yeah.
That's just my perspective on it, and I know you guys share that perspective on it. That's why we train, and that's why we're here. And I just think that's that's the tip of it. Like that's the most laser down, dialed in approach is that warriorship, that weaponizing, training for violence. Like I can't. I'm trying to picture something else. Maybe there's some extreme examples and some other areas, but I don't think that's. If you can think of something, let me know.
Yeah. No.
Well, one example here is all the failure or the struggle in training. I probably, if I hadn't had that and learned to fail forward, I might not be on this podcast right now, because I had a little bit of an anxiety before coming on this, but it was a come what may thing, right? So, and now it's like, will I come on and do I let the fear of that, of potential failure on the podcast take hold of me? And it was just like, fuck it, who cares? Like, come what may, let's go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, again, like, I say it all the time, and maybe people don't really get what I say, but when I say it, what I mean by it is I'd never tell anybody what we're going to talk about. And, people could say, oh, that's cruel, or that's like, but wouldn't the podcast be better if you let them prepare? Yeah, Mac's like, yeah, it is cruel. Like, write in email, complaint line. Like, but why I do that is not for any of those reasons, and it's for all those reasons. Because at the end of the day, it's like what I do is I help mentor men to become better warriors and protectors, and at the same time, the process that I was taught that I'm sharing is always being reflected back on me, and therefore I am constantly a student working the same process. So what I'm saying is that I do that because you then have to confront those fears, like something as simple as that. But it's like, yeah, so what do I do? Get the fuck on there and just share what you know, because you're training to be a warrior. You are a fucking warrior. You are protectors. And it's not just because you've been around 11 years, you've been around 13 years. The day you made a decision to take responsibility, and how you know someone's actually taking responsibility is because they took a massive action. And each of you guys made a decision and took a fucking action. And every single day, every single week, every single month, every single year, you continue to make that choice. And that choice betters you. And so here you are again, great example, Shane. And now you were forced with what might seem like an insignificant decision. Do I do the podcast or don't? Do I say yes or do I say no? And when I do it, do I fucking just freeze up and then be like, oh, and then after I get off, oh, I hated it and I did this? Or do I just fucking do it? Come what may, and I just fucking do it. And so what did you end up doing? You pull the trigger and you just fucking do it. Right? And at the end of it, it's like, there it is. It's done. It was good. And again, the struggle makes the victory worthwhile. And you're a different person for having said yes and having done that stuff. So everything that we do has a purpose behind it. It's by design, right? It is all the chrysalis that a warrior has to go through. I mean, what do I say all the time? Work the process because the process works. And it's like, you can't state it any more plainly than that, and people just have to go, aha, yes, work the process because the process works. And then just fucking do. Most people know what to do. Very few people do what they know, right? They know what to do, but they just don't do what they know. And the weaponizing process really keeps people accountable to doing what they know. And if they don't know it, they learn it. And then they execute on it, right? So I think too, Mac, I want to circle because something you said really hit me because I think if we had a beginning part, you're not in the beginning. You're not the man you need to be to get you into this training. You have to go through a chrysalis to get into this. I've seen it, so many times. So that's the first step. Then there's this mid thing where you really failure and challenge and struggle is completely remapped for you. And it's just you have a completely different neuroassociation and response and beliefs with it. And it's such a powerful, liberating thing in every aspect of your life. I think one of the big not end like it's the end of your journey, but if we were looking at it in from like first, second, third, just to kind of give three, warrior stages of a chrysalis. I think one of the things that comes once you've been in this for a while, and it's not that it's not there, it's not that it's absent in the beginning, but it really dials in, and Mac, you kind of were alluding to this, is, what other process has this type of power, right? Because fitness and exercise, here's why I believe that statement also be true. At the end of the day, one of the biggest transformations that I had is I see crystal clear the value of the right to life. And like no other right that we have even comes close to our right to life. And I'll give you a different way to look at that. What do you have if you lose your health? If you all of a sudden tomorrow, you're so sick you can't get out of bed. You're struck down with an illness that takes your sight or takes your hearing or takes your speech. Now, you can adapt with certain things. You can adapt and live a long, fulfilled life still. But when you're struggling with your health where you can't breathe right, you can't get out of bed, you can't do something as simple as feed yourself or tie your shoes or bend over and hug your child. Like, if you don't have your health, you don't have fucking anything. And most people understand that. A lot of people have lived it. They've had a health scare. They've had a crisis in their life. They've had whatever, where they have experienced what we're talking about. And so maybe they've come back from that and they have a whole different appreciation for that. Well, as valuable as if you don't have your health, you have nothing. If you don't have your life, you know what I mean? You don't have it, like you're dead. Dead is dead. So when you're talking about weaponizing, you're talking about your life. Nothing trumps that. So when you're dealing with the struggles of things and people that are willing to take your life, to take everything you have, your life, like what was it Clint Eastwood said in The Unforgiven? You know what I mean? Like, it's like that's the funny thing about killing a man. You take everything he's got and everything he's ever going to have. And it's like there's such depth and power to that. That's the right to life. You take everything he's got and everything he's going to have, and you don't just take everything he's got. You take a massive part of what his kids have had, his wife has had, his family's had, his friends have had. When you take the life of a good man, you take what his community had, what that city had, what that country had. Like you take everything. So weaponizing is so fucking primal. And at the end of it, you have this just transformation to where you have such an appreciation for life. Isn't that funny, right? I start because I need to know how to defend against violence and protect my life. And you think people can see that as like this, oh my God, like that's so dark and toxic, and you're dealing with violence and all this shit, and it's the underbelly of life, and it's toxic and it's corrosive. Yet what you get out of it is a deeper appreciation for the beauty of life and the gift of life than, like, you know what I mean? And that's nothing but sunshine. That's nothing but positivity. That's nothing but hope. That's nothing but, like, it's the fucking most beautiful thing in the world is to deeply appreciate life. And wake up every day, and no matter what's going on in your life, the second that air hits your lungs and your eyes open up, like, you just appreciate on a level that most people can't. You see a sunrise or a sunset or a leaf, or you listen to kids playing or something, you know, you laugh with friends, and you just become so aware of these moments of beauty, and you absorb every fucking fraction of a second of it. And that comes because as warriors, you know, have this transformation that they experience via the warrior process, to where they just connect to this right to life, the beauty of life. I don't know. How does that resonate with you guys? And how is that, you know, let me ask it this way. Has training and weaponizing and dealing with violence and all that stuff, has that given you a deeper appreciation for your right to life, for the beauty of life, the joy of life, all that stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, go ahead, expand on that. That'd be great.
Okay, I was just going to say what you were talking there. One of the things I was thinking there is, like, I know in the past, you know, people made comments before, like, oh, you're training for violence, you're preparing for violence, like, you know, the what ifs. And a lot of people don't want to think that way, right? They just want to ignore the possibility that violence could affect their life or the lives of their loved ones. And so they just want to ignore that. They put the blinders on. They go, la, 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 you know, headphones in. It's not happened to me. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to watch the news. The odds are, you know, it won't happen. You know, all the things people say, right? And if you know, try and counteract, or you try and debate, or you try and, you know, say, well, to me it's important because I think it's a risk. And one of the things people say is that you're paranoid. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe that's your perspective. I don't feel that way. But I also think if you're aware that this is a possibility, even if you're trying to ignore it, even if you're in denial about it, to a certain level, you've still got to feel that anxiety from that. And I don't know that me personally, I could ever truly relax and feel 100% safe and at peace if I didn't know I had taken some steps to prepare for that worry. And so I think being 100% relaxed and at peace is the opposite of being paranoid. And I only think I get that from training. I mean, maybe if you were locked in a bunker with some sort of nuclear blast doors on it with cameras all around, you could feel 100% safe and at peace. But outside of that, having some sort of preparation or training, I think is the only other way to kind of feel that sense of relaxation and peace, and knowing that you are safe to what you can be, because you know what the problem is, you know what the solution is, and you've taken steps to prepare for it. So the work's done. Relax.
I love it. I love that analogy because it puts a different angle on the fact that, you know, you recognize how valuable your life is, and when you've taken the steps to be able to protect what is your greatest gift, then only with that can come that peace, right? And that peace, I think you did a great job of explaining it. I think everyone knows what that peace feels like, to feel safe. And at the end of the day, as human beings, we all need to feel safe. I don't care how macho you are, whatever. We all want to feel safe, right? So yeah, well put. I love that. That was really good. Shane, how about you for how this has, you know, changed your viewpoint on right to life? And
I just to build off of what Max said, is I think it's that confidence that the time that you're at that moment, you've done everything you could to keep yourself safe, to take, you know, your life and liberty into your own hands, and that of your family and stuff like that. So it's like that in itself, like having that confidence that up till this point I've done everything I could, that brings that peace along. And I think with that peace, like 100%, you're more grateful for all the things in your life, like the small simple things. You get way more out of that stuff, and you're not really searching for always like a bigger, better thing. It's like you're able to take more out of the things that some people don't even get any gratitude and stuff. They don't get any happiness or that kind of stuff from those things. So that's yeah.
Yeah. I really like that, Shane. I actually think we could really spend a lot more time. We're going to get ready to wrap up here, but because, both of you guys, the way that you articulated, instead of just, kind of directly talking about how you see, how your appreciation for life, you each shared kind of your own unique story with it that I think really illustrated it well. And Shane, when you're talking about the fact that like just knowing that you have done what you could do, like you have used your time, you have prepared, I've done what I can do. Again, and go back to what Max said, like, no, we're not in search of perfection here. We're just people, and we're people working a process, right? And so I really liked when you were like, I could really feel when you're talking about like the fact that I've done everything that I can do. And so knowing that I've done what I can do brings me peace. And yet that side of it is like, there is a correlation there to being like, when you value life, you're like, I don't want to let other people down. And I definitely don't want to let other people down when it comes to something that's life and death, right? Because of how valuable that is. And so, they'll often say about soldiers that the soldiers aren't, no matter what their political beliefs are or whatever agenda is being driven, is why we're fighting this war in the first place. When men go into battle and women go into battle, we're doing it for the person to the left of us and to the right of us. And that fear of letting other people down far supersedes our fear of personal injury or death. Yet most people, if you ask, would think, well, what's the number one fear stepping onto a battlefield? And it's like, well, I don't want to be fucking injured or killed. And it's like, well, that fear often doesn't even make the top 10. And what is often right at the top is the fear of letting other people down. And so this amazing gift of life that we have, and as you train for violence, you just develop such an appreciation for it and for life and all that other stuff. But, I really like the way that came out of just like, I know that I've done what I can do. Right. And therefore that brings that peace. And so it just, to me, it's like paying on that debt. We have these amazing freedoms. Our freedoms were fought and at the cost of blood and other people's lives to gain us these freedoms. And when you train, I believe you pay back on that debt because you take on the burden and responsibility to say, these rights are not, these rights, people have to die for these rights. They died for these rights. People have to be willing to protect and die for these rights. And so I'm willing to prepare and just know that this amazing gift I have of my life, my freedoms, my rights came at a cost. And I'm gonna share some of that by training and preparing myself to be able to protect this gift that I have of life, as well as my rights and freedoms and so on and so forth. So it's a great topic. I think we could go really deep and keep diving down on this. But for tonight, guys, I just wanted to really share again what I call the Warrior's Chrysalis. It is a transformative process. We don't start there. It's a lifelong journey. I think you guys would agree. There's no end to this. That's the beauty of it. That's why myself and both you guys are lifestyle guys. This is not a hobby. This is not what we do. This is who we are. It's deeply integrated into our identity, our lives, our beliefs, our values. And it's just such an amazing journey, an amazing process. So any final thoughts, guys, that you'd want to share for anybody listening on tonight's topic?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think definitely the hardest step to take is the first step and getting started. And if you're listening to this or whenever, or seeing it, or however you're coming into content or contact with this content, it's like, we get it. The first step is the hardest, and starting is the hardest part. But once you're in motion and you're taking those steps, it gets easier. It's way easier than whatever it is you're scared of. That's the only thing I can think of, because I know I felt that before in tons of different areas of my life. Getting started is often the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
And this can be a scary topic, or something that's been weighing on someone's mind for a lot of years, which is what it was weighing on my mind before I started. And just that first step. It's not going to be as hard as you think it's going to be.
Yeah, no, it's well put.
I think to add to Mac's comment there is, you might look at starting this as scary, but it's not as scary as when violence happens and what could potentially come from that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Brings us full circle back to, I mean, without, what do you have if you don't have your life? What do you have? After is often too late, unfortunately, right? So, all right, guys, listen, I want to thank you guys for stepping up last minute, covering in for Coach Brad, Coach Dustin and stuff. Definitely appreciate
It's their excuse.
it. Yeah, exactly. Life factor moments, right? But you guys are willing to step up. As always, thank you guys for being a part of the process, sharing your knowledge, not just on this podcast tonight, but always being willing to come out with new guys and share and help coach and share your experience, which is just it's hard fought experience, and it's mentorship is a community thing. It's a tribe thing. So I really appreciate you guys always being part of our tribe and willing to help. To anybody that's listening, again, we're just going to encourage you at the end of this to help us spread our message. Again, we don't sell anything on this. Whether you're training with us or you find a warrior's journey that suits you, that you connect with and resonates with you, we all here highly encourage you to walk that path, to take those steps. Find your warrior chrysalis, find the transformation, because it never stops. It'll serve you for the rest of your life. From your 20s, 30s, 40s, all the way up to 80s and 90s, you can continue to grow as a warrior, as a human being. And it's an amazing thing. And I highly recommend everybody, find something like this in their lives. And that's it. So spread our message, like, share, comment. Again, wherever you get your favorite podcast, however you came to this content, please like, subscribe, leave us a rating or review. It is, it's almost hard to describe how much that helps us spread our message. That is our goal, is to just organically spread this warrior to warrior the same way we train. So that is our mission here, is to help people stay safe, stay weaponized. So until next time, everybody, we'll chat again soon. Have a great night.